Today we've got the wonderful Biz Bell with us. Hi, Biz.
Hi, everyone.
It's lovely to have you with us. When I always think of predator-free work, and I put you right up there as a major ambassador in this space, can you just describe what you, or like, for people who don't know you, many will, exactly who you are and your company?
So I'm the Managing Director of Wildlife Management International, and we're a specialist ecological conservation firm, and we do a whole heap of eradication work internationally and predator-free work and community engagement and projects in New Zealand.
Lovely, well explained. The topic of today is titled Eradication, We've All Got a Role, and it's a really good subject. This is where many of the people that are watching this are from. Biz, do you have anything to say to them before we begin?
Oh, well, basically the community is where it's at right now, and it's the roles they've got to play are key for all of the projects, both in New Zealand and internationally now.
Yeah, great. Well, let's get underway. I'm just going to move you and I to one side so everyone can see your wonderful presentation, and then I'm just going to sit back and you take it away. There we are. It's all yours.
Great. Well, yes, welcome everyone, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here today to chat through eradications and those exciting roles we all do have to play to do them. I got asked actually what this picture was from, and this is from one of our international eradication projects that we did in the Isles of Scilly off Cornwall coast in the UK, and this was our eradication preparation, where we were doing waste management and collecting all sorts of excess debris and harbourage and problem places for rats, and we created a Guy Fawkes bonfire. We sponsored some fireworks, and the whole community came out, and we had a wonderful picnic night and barbecue, as well as a gigantic bonfire. So, this is just one of the little aspects communities can get involved with as we're preparing the islands or locations for eradication. So just a little bit about myself. So, as I said, I'm the Managing Director of Wildlife Management, and I look after an incredibly passionate team of 16 ecologists. And we do all sorts of work across New Zealand and around the world. I have sort of two hats. I'm a seabird ecologist, and seabirds are a wonderful love of mine. And but island restoration is my other key focus, and we do that both in New Zealand and internationally. And we've done over 25 eradications around the world, as well as investigating projects to see if we can do eradications on about another sort of 50 islands around the world. So it's a pretty exciting field to be in. And of course, it's not just me. I do a lot of work with a lot of amazing people and agencies, and that's, again, internationally and in New Zealand, and lots of communities and residents and iwi. And, so when I talk about these projects, and when I always accidentally say we did this and we did that, I'm actually talking about all of these people who helped all the way along the road, because everybody who helps on these projects plays a vital role. We couldn't do it without them. So just want to sort of talk a little bit about what control is, what eradication is, and what biosecurity is, because, people get confused about all of them and wonder how this works and what it all means. So a control operation or a control program is something where you're targeting, and we'll talk about rats because they're easy and they're part of the picture there. You're targeting some rats, but you're not targeting them all. You will have some animals left over at the end of it. And of course, control is ongoing and happens forever. Eradication, on the other hand, is a shorter time frame, really intensive program, and it's targeting every single individual. So there'll be no rats left at the end of it. And it requires, quite a bit of robust requirements, really good design, and a really strong implementation team to do it. It requires adequate resourcing, and that's not just money, but that's also people and tools and things. But the most important is it really requires a whatever it takes attitude. It's quite a different mindset to control. And you know, we're not saying control is not a bad thing. I mean, control is reducing the pest species to a threshold that you're happy with, you know, that it's a balance between what's acceptable impacts but on a native species, but that native species can still thrive. And then, of course, you've got biosecurity, and this is a critical part. And you need biosecurity throughout your projects so that you're not accidentally reintroducing something throughout any stage of your project. And of course, biosecurity is still important on a control operation because you don't want something new coming into your area, as well as the target species you're trying to eradicate or control from that area to remain there. So it's really important. But the key thing about eradication is that, you know, design and implementation and making sure that it's really robust. Now, interestingly, of course, there's been a massive number of eradications that have happened around the world. And, you know, focusing on rats, there's been over 500 rat eradications alone. And that's in 40 different countries across the world. Now, New Zealand is sort of leading the way in rat eradications. We've probably done the most in the world, but the world is actually catching up. And of course, there are not just rat eradications. So there's mouse eradications, feral cat eradications, feral pigs, goats, mongoose, snakes, all sorts of weird and wonderful things that are being eradicated around the world. Now, of course, a lot of these have been done on uninhabited islands, but that's changing. So we've got a significant number of islands now that have had eradications on with communities, but we've also got a lot of mainland sites and islands that are now prioritised for eradication that everybody wants to do that have residents and communities on. So it's the communities and the community aspect is becoming more and more important. And of course, we've got our current vision in New Zealand. So to become predator-free by 2050. And of course, we're targeting, you know, the three groups. So the rat species, the mustelids and the possums. And of course, this means we've got a massive number of really exciting projects happening around the country and on mainland, you know, this is from the mainland all the way to several of our islands. But we've also got hundreds of projects that are also being developed and getting into. So, you know, it's exciting things to come as well. Eradications are carried out for a number of reasons, you know, but primarily for the protection and enhancement of endangered or threatened species and habitats, you know, and particularly seabirds and, you know, like our petrels there and our albatross, you know, getting rid of those last predators on some of our offshore islands down in the sub-Antarctic and things, the land birds, so all those ones that we see in our backyards, the tuis and the fantails and the kereroo and things, but also to look after, you know, those special ones like kakapo and kokako and things. But not to forget that the importance of our invertebrates, our wetters and things, but also our frogs and our lizards. So, you know, and often it's the communities who also just want to protect their little patch of paradise. So their little park or their little reserve that they've got on their doorstep. And so it's also trying to sort that out and look after their bit. So an eradication is about taking everybody along with them for the journey. So it's not just about a scientist or an eradication operator coming in and clearing the island of rats or cats or pigs or mice. It's about taking everybody with us. Because basically now where we're working on places with communities or islands with communities or mainland situations, everybody is really keen to be involved and have a say. And so part of that first step is to develop the vision of the project. And this is to get everybody thinking about what's important to them. You know, and it's also recognising that this vision is that it's the community and the iwi that are driving these projects a lot of the time. And this is a real case particularly for the predator-free 2050 projects. So it's not just scientists who are focusing on biodiversity goals, but it's the public wanting to protect their islands or their special areas on the mainland. And so it's really important to have effective consultation and communication with all of the community and iwi and stakeholders so that we can get everybody's point of view and understand where they're coming from. You know, basically, for a vision, it could be simply finding out what's important to that community. You know, what do they want? What do they want to protect? You know, what do they want to happen in the future? You know, look at what's happening in Wainuiomata. They want kakapo, hihi, and kokako back in their forest, in our backyards there in Wellington. And that's the sort of vision we want. We want these great, I want this in the future type of vision. You know, it'd be great to have a kakapo in my backyard in Spring Creek and Blenheim, you know, not a problem. And the really important thing is to understand that the success of any eradication or control program is really dependent on that participation and support of the community. You know, you may not want to go out and actually set a trap or put a piece of bait down, but just being happy and caring about that community and that project is good to have that level of support as well. And having that legacy, that support and that participation from the community means that the legacy of the project into the future will be much, much stronger and much more secure. So generally with an eradication, you start off with a feasibility study to see if you actually can do your project. And this really helps because basically what we're trying to do is learn from the experience of the people living on the island and in the community and in their mainland situation, but learning from their experience, that what they're already doing. I mean, several places have had backyard trapping groups going on for years and years. And so it's also about answering their questions about how does an eradication work and what does it mean to them? And is it going to affect their day-to-day lives? Answering their concerns, you know, is this going to affect my toddler? Is this going to affect my cat? And explaining the requirements of an eradication. Particularly operators like myself have to remember that not everybody knows what an eradication is or means. So it's trying to explain what we do and what happens. Part of a feasibility is also to get that technical assessment. You know, what does your island or your mainland site look like? Are there mountains? Are there cliffs? You know, are there any other non-target species? Particularly when we're looking at places where people live, you know, what industry is there? How many schools are present? You know, is there anything special that we have to avoid? You know, amazing archaeological site, all sorts of stuff like that. It's remembering also that some people just want rats gone. They actually have no interest in conservation. They don't know what a seabird is. They're not really sure what a weta is and if they even want one in their backyard, but that they really still support the project. And we've got to understand that there's a whole range of different viewpoints about why, you know, we should get rid of rats or possums. The key thing as well is that lots of people need to share their knowledge, and what they've found out over the years in their patch is really important and could make the difference about an eradication, whether it's going to happen or not. And it's just understanding what the requirements are, you know, undertaking trials, whether you can use that type of bait station or that type of trap, seeing if the rats like chocolate flavoured wax blocks or do they prefer aniseed flavoured, you know, because you want to be able to identify that you've got the last rat, and so you need to know what that is. What type of traps can you use? Can you use the A24 multi-kills, or are you going to use the Victor traps? Situations where you've got mangrove forests, how do we put bait stations in mangroves like Waiheke Island's having to deal with, and developing these amazing floating bait stations? You know, it's trying to get all of that information together in a feasibility. Just understanding what's going on, and the community can answer a lot of those questions because, of course, they live there. And then, of course, once you've got all your questions answered, and yes, your island is feasible or your mainland site is feasible, it's getting into that eradication. And the thing is everybody has got a role. And yes, some of these eradications will be undertaken by contractors, but a lot of them will be undertaken with the assistance of groups that are already in place in these locations. You know, Wellington, Predator Free Wellington and the Miramar group there has been really supported by the program there. The island communities we've worked with, community members wanted to maintain the bait stations or traps in their own properties and particularly inside their houses. So we trained them up on how to use the traps and how to put bait safely in a bait station. We talked to the school children and got them involved, asking them to do the pre-eradication monitoring for non-target species or their special key species. And then we train everybody else up on how to ID rat sign and things like that, and what to do. Another key aspect is making the bait stations or traps. So a lot of our eradications internationally, we use the Nova coil bait station, so cutting up drain pipe after drain pipe after drain pipe to put in around the island. And that happens here, but also, you know, it's creating the trap boxes, and men's sheds across New Zealand are doing a fantastic job, building thousands of trap boxes out to give to community groups and things. You know, the picture here of us with the abseiling work, and that's us showing the landowner, so the man who owned this island, how to abseil and get into some sites that he'd never been into on his very special island, and just showing him that, you know, we can show him an extra special site on his spot. And it's basically making sure that the community has a place to share their knowledge and help the eradication proceed. And to sort of use the examples of two projects in particular, so we've got the predator-free Miramar team. So this is the backyard trappers that have been backyard trapping for years before the predator-free project started. And they've continued to backyard trap because extra traps inside an eradication network is absolutely fantastic. The more devices that are out there to target those rats is fantastic. But now Dan Henry and his fantastic team are getting out there and doing extra checks and backing up the predator-free team in some of the bush areas on the peninsula. And they're just going from strength to strength and supplementing all of that extra work for the eradication team and giving some fantastic feedback and really critical results to get this area down to zero. They're reporting actual and potential rat sightings, they're trapping rats, they're checking devices, and they're just making a huge impact so that they can help that eradication get completed. And then we've got places like the Waiheke Rat Busters, who have been doing rat control, pulsed rat control on Waiheke for years, and basically making really great conservation footsteps for the species there, real impact. And now they're supporting and enhancing the Te Korawai or Waiheke project, basically because their knowledge of their areas and the information they can share about how rat behaviour affects those areas is going to make a real difference to what's happening on the ground there in Waiheke. It's that local knowledge that's really critical. And of course, like I said, it's not all about eradication. Of course, some places in New Zealand, we haven't quite got the tools and techniques there yet. But control at local sites and working towards eradication, you know, such as the Nelson Halo region, which is protecting the Brook Waimarama Sanctuary and all the species that leave that lovely predator-proof fenced area and disperse into the surrounding hills and habitats in Nelson. And it's about working together, you know, with those scientists and ecologists in the sanctuary, with the community groups, to protect all the other natural areas around to reduce them. And so a lot of different community groups in this area in Nelson are working together to protect their little patch, but linking up into a wider regional benefit for those species that are there. And things. And as new tools and techniques are developed through both the Predator-Free 2050 system, but also internationally, it's allowing bigger and more complex areas to be targeted. And so more and more community members are getting engaged with these programs. And part of what our role is to help train them up. So we train them up on how to use traps and the different trap types and what new things are coming on stream that they could help with. So we have a lot of fun in their own little parks and set up some new systems. But we also do on the site training for introducing them to all the tools. So we go to their place and we teach them how to use TrapNZ and how to store their data and how to analyze their data, but also show them all sorts of new tools and techniques and things. So it's been great to interact with the community and see their passion about getting something done in their little patch. And then, of course, as you're getting towards the end of your eradication, you've got that vital part where you need to confirm that you've got no more rats or stoats or possums or whatever your target species is. And really importantly, we've now got to monitor. And monitoring can be using a whole range of tools, but it also includes your bait, because you can see teeth marks on your bait. It also includes your trap. I mean, if you've trapped a rat, that shows that you've still got a rat there. It's not down to the last individual yet. It's using things like trail cameras, dissecting rats, seeing evidence of droppings, making things. So we've had members of the community make hundreds upon thousands of wax blocks, so flavored blocks that are non-toxic you put out so that you can see if a rat chews on it and leaves its teeth marks so you can know what's going on. We've had communities help us with the tracking tunnels, putting out tracking tunnels to see if there's anything going on, and reporting stuff. The thing is, most of the community members, this is their patch, they know and will be able to see if something is different or strange. They know it intimately, their site, so they'd be able to say, oh, what's going on? This is different. And you should look into this area because I think there's footprints here. You can report things. So like for the Waiheke project and some of the international projects I've worked on, for the same thing. If you see a stoat, click this button, report it here. It's those extra eyes and ears that we have with the community members that are super important. You've got a limited number of eradication staff usually. They can't be everywhere on the island, but because the community's there, and anything from 20 people to 10,000 people on the Miramar Peninsula, every single one of those sets of eyes and ears is really important. So in this Miramar example, Seatoon, they did a special blitz on monitoring and got their own special rat tests out there. So it wasn't anything to do with COVID, but it was basically to help us get extra monitoring tools on the ground in all of these areas that we're sure are clear of rats, and we want to confirm it. So by having some extra devices on the ground and people checking their own backyards and extra places meant we could be really sure that there were no rats there. So that's really critical. It's seeing with your own individual eyes some extra sign to tell us whether there's still something there that we have to target or not. And of course, there's that super important final stage where you actually get to do the restoration monitoring that you wanted to do, looking after the key species. And part of this, of course, is vital throughout the eradication. You want to understand what your baseline is, what are your species levels are at before the eradication, what they're at afterwards. And it's all sorts of things. It can be land bird counts, it can be seabird monitoring. Are your seabirds producing chicks for the first time in 90 years, like this little lovely Manx shearwater chick on, St Agnes and Goo? We're talking to some of the grandmothers on this island, and they had never seen a chick before. They'd seen the adult birds, but to be able to go out in the dark with a headlamp and be showing some shearwater chicks, they were just so super happy. But it's also, there's lizard monitoring, there's invertebrate counts, there's vegetation monitoring. Are the seedlings coming back? Is your forest being restored as well? And as these things change and improve, again, it's the locals that'll notice. The number of Facebook posts about kakariki and falcon and Miramar now is amazing because everybody's super excited. The fact that people are seeing geckos in their backyards, kids just are getting blown away by the fact that they can see weta and their weta houses that they've put in place for conservation projects are filling up. And it's just making everybody super happy. But it's enjoying the benefits of a pest-free location, and getting to that amazing point of being able to reintroduce those species that you've been passionate about and that were part of that vision statement. So releasing saddleback, hopefully getting kakapo in our backyards, that sort of thing, helping do all the bird survey work and things. I mean, we've had schools help us with some of our eradication post-monitoring. 2 of our eradication islands had an endemic wood mouse and one had an endemic shrew present. And the school children at these islands did that post-eradication monitoring for us. So we helped them establish a little project about how to monitor these species and then how to count what that meant and then analyse their data. And then they got published scientifically as part of that with it. So not only did they have fun doing this on their own island, saying, yes, our little mice were safe, you got rid of rats, but our mice are still here and their numbers are increasing over this period of time. They actually got to put that in a scientific journal and be published as part of the eradication team. And they're just blown away by the fact that that's what they're allowed to do. And it just brought them into the fact that how important their wildlife is for their region. And everybody can do that part of things. There's lots of little steps of monitoring that you can do all the way through, being trained up to do all that monitoring and be involved in that, because this is the fun part. Most people don't like doing the killing part, but they all want to do this amazing aspect of being able to study the species that they really want to see in their area. And then the role of biosecurity. We can't enforce how amazingly important this is. Biosecurity is one of the most important steps of an eradication because, of course, once you get rid of your pest species, you really don't want them back. And there's lots of different methods to do it, but this is one of the most important roles the community can play. It's supporting the biosecurity on their island or in their little patch of mainland, because they're the ones who are going to see something, most likely. They're going to be the ones to be able to implement a rapid detection and response to what they've seen. And this is the vital part of the legacy of an eradication. People getting involved and reporting things that they see. And part of it is we train up all our communities that we're involved with on islands so that they can take over this role. We've got community liaison officers and community engagement officers and ambassadors on our islands who are running the biosecurity programs. They monitor biosecurity stations monthly, they report any rat sightings, they investigate any rat sightings that somebody may have said they've seen, which of course gets particularly busy in a tourist season when an island can have 20,000 tourists and 19,000 of them say they think they've seen a rat. And so you have to investigate every sighting, but they're so engaged and connected with the fact that this eradication happened and that they have seen the benefits with their seabirds coming back and their landbirds coming back and their shrews coming back, that they want to keep the island protected. So they do all of these investigations and checks as part of their role. It's critically important, to get that training and understanding of how does a pest species get back to my island and how can I help prevent that? And of course, it's not just about rats. There's lots of work in the Hauraki Gulf as shown there that, we don't want plague skinks, we don't want Argentine ants, and we don't want seeds and things. So although we don't want rats back, or we don't want possums back, or we don't want stoats back on some of the islands, we also don't want these other things. So that's why it's important to do biosecurity all the way through your project as well, and things. And yeah, so like I said, there's basically a hell of a lot of roles for people. And like I said, that the community is the most important phase of a member of an eradication team on an island or in a community site or on a mainland site that has an eradication program going, because you are the ones that are going to be able to see everything and notice everything and detect everything for those eradication operators. And working together is going to get us to those eradication goals and visions that we all want to start off with. So thanks very much for listening. And has anybody got any questions?
Yes, thank you. That's great, Biz. Thank you. I'm going to zoom quickly back to slide number 6 here, because the first question that came through related to slide number 6, which were the colours down by 2050 there, what they represent. And I know that it's quite a small picture, but maybe you could give us an idea. Very pretty picture.
So the colours are the different types of control, and I'd have to, maybe Margaret can remember from the graphs, but so some of the different colours are for different species being targeted. So I think it's blue for possum, orange for possums, and then red for projects that are ongoing, multi-species. So yeah, different predators. So if you go to the predator-free page, you can find this map, and it will give all that information about what they are and what the colours mean.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you.
Should have thought about that and put a little legend up there. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. And you're right. I think if you go to the Predator-Free New Zealand Trust site, you'll be able to find that map, and it's got a key with it. Okay. The next question that came through was just from one person. Hi guys, I live in Onimana outside of Whangamata. I would like to set up a predator group. I only have 6 tim traps and I target possums and have 8 rat bait stations. Would DOC assist in funding? Big question mark.
Well, maybe, and it doesn't hurt to ask, but your local councils are a good place to start. Most councils will also help support these sort of projects with funding, with community funding for predator work. So yeah, don't give up, definitely.
And from your experience, just while we're on that funding side, have you detected that there's any particular things that help a little bit, and when you're putting your case forward for some funding, what do funders want to know from you?
Basically, they just want to know that you've got all the support you require. So, and you've got a really good plan going forward, really. So, and that's what we mean by a vision statement, really. So you can work from, this is what we want, this is what we have now, we've got permissions, we've got all our stakeholders, we've got this many people who are really keen to be involved, and this is what we need to get to there. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's very helpful. A question came in, have you any experience with, and if so, where do you see the rodent contraceptive product Contrapest fitting into New Zealand's predator-free vision?
Well, I've got the view that we shouldn't discount any tool, basically. We need all the tools in our toolbox and things. And so I haven't worked with the contraceptive thing. We're mainly using rodenticides and traps on our eradications, mainly on islands. And things. So, but yeah, I wouldn't discount the use of these other tools at all. So no, I think every tool is important and should be investigated, and the use and the validity in our environments should be tested.
Do you work with and encourage the plant pest eradication control groups whose work is vital to the health of native ecosystems on which our native fauna depends?
Well, all of our collaborative work it's all part of this. So we need to make sure that our pest plants are managed, that our pest species are managed, and how that all interacts. Vital. I totally support all of that type of work.
Sean asks, how difficult it is to eradicate mice? How is this accomplished? Just came in. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, so it is difficult to eradicate mice, generally because they've got a much smaller home range. They're more problematic because they're like buildings, and so can hide in smaller places and have much smaller habitat requirements and things like that. At the moment, most mouse eradications are done very similar ways, using a rodenticide that's targeting mice, but on a much smaller grid size, or an aerial operation, depending on your regulations and if you're allowed to use that. So yeah, but yeah, they require a lot more effort. They're a lot more difficult.
This one is targeted straight at you. Says, "Hi, Biz." Then the person puts, "I no longer think we can get predator-free countrywide by 2050 by trapping and toxin alone." And then I just gone sort of to the end of the question where it sort of says, "Do you see the use in the future of the gene drive to modify pest behaviour to get us across the line faster?"
Well, this is the thing. At the moment, we are probably short of a few tools, which is what we're all working towards to get those new systems in place that we can work. And like I said, I think we need to look at everything in our toolbox, and that includes these gene drive options and just seeing if they are feasible and safe, of course. But
of course.
Yeah, we'll get there. Yeah. I mean, this is the thing, that research and development is vital, and to get us there. We've got like I said, a great lot of community groups doing some fantastic work, holding the ground while we are developing these new tools.
Somebody's quite specific about page number 13, which we can't go back to. It says, what is the recipe for the mix being poured into the muffin trays?
If people want to email me, we have a wax block guide that is freely available. It's actually on our website, our wildlife management website, and the recipes are there. We use a range of recipes for different species, and particularly even just for rats, because you can have incredibly fussy rats. 90% of the population will like chocolate, and the last 1% will like aniseed. So we make a range, or peanut butter flavored. So it's on our website, the free guide. It gives a step by step, but basically we are melting down wax, adding some chocolate powder or some peanut butter, and then making them. So yeah, and if anybody can't find it via our website, please just flick me an email, and I can pass it on.
Great. And so people know this is being recorded, and then it goes on the Predator Free New Zealand Trust website with all our other webinars that we've done over the couple of years, and quite a library we're building up too. And now you're on it too, Biz, which is lovely. Do you target wasps?
So not personally, we don't do any wasp control. We have actually done some in limited places for some people as we walked through doing some bird survey work, but not specifically. But there are some really great people out there who can do that for you.
Somebody's asked, what's the best way to get rid of wallabies? Is it fun for you?
Yeah. Well, depends. Yeah, lots of different ways, but mostly people do shooting or trapping and shooting. Right.
Richard asks, what is the relative risk of wild versus domestic cats in Aotearoa? It's a big question, I know.
It is a big question. So I mean,
we're getting better at having a crack at answering some of these.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, I'm not a cat person, and that's to be straight up with people. But I recognise that companion pets, people love them, and I've got no problem with people keeping pet cats. However, I really advocate that we need cats to be registered, microchipped, spayed and neutered, and kept indoors, basically, to protect our native flora and fauna. We really need that sort of level of protection for cats. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a conversation that is getting more and more people at least having a crack at, and I've heard a rumor that in one of these webinars soon we may open it up to that discussion on domestic and feral cats, which would be a webinar worth watching, I believe.
Absolutely, we need to have that conversation. There's a lot of community groups who get frustrated that we're controlling rats and stoats and possums, but they see feral cats in their region as a bigger issue, and we need to deal with this.
Yeah, good. What islands are you working on at the moment, Edward asks?
So locally in New Zealand, we're working in giving some advice and technical support to the Waiheke project and the Wellington project, as well as a few other community groups locally and around the country. Internationally, we're working in Northern Ireland, the Caribbean, and the Channel Islands. So some pretty exciting spots.
Absolutely. Jess asks, is there any way of getting rid of invasive plants without using pesticides?
There are. So, I mean, the problem is a lot of it is manhandling and labour intensive. So, several species and some projects that we've worked on, we actually cut and remove from plants, but it does depend on your plant, and it is massively labour intensive due to seedling requirements, and checks for seeds and longevity of those. So it can depend on your species that your pest plant.
And what's the most challenging eradication project you've been part of so far?
Probably some of the, I was going to say that the Isles of Scilly was amazing. It's technically challenging with community of 80 people. Of course, that doesn't sound very many, but there's lots of farms, there's schools, there's 2 churches, businesses and things. In fact, it actually went like clockwork. So, you know, it doesn't sound like it was difficult, but it's just making sure that everybody on that island was supportive and happy, and that we could adapt the project to fit if they had concerns. You know, we changed our baiting start date because a family were about to go on holiday and they had a brand new little dog, and they were worried that it could target bait, even though we, you know, informed them that it was going to be secure. So we delayed the project for a week. They went on holiday for their winter for 2 months and came back, and all the toxin was gone. So they were really happy, and they couldn't believe that we would alter a major, very expensive project just to make them happy. And I said, no, you are the most important people on this island, and we need to make sure that everybody's happy. So it's just doing little steps like that.
You're getting lots of questions. They love you. Are there any programs, Jean asks, eradicating predators along motorways?
Well, there isn't, but there's no reason why we can't start those. Basically, I mean, a lot of these predator-free projects, of course, are going to become more interconnected. So a lot of those motorways will be dealt with when those projects do connect up. But that doesn't mean we can't actually start a project in a particular area that you think is important.
Jeremy asks, how can we get councils to take responsibility for eradication of German and European wasps?
Keep bugging them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, basically, basically we have to put pressure on people to take more responsibility. So, and that comes down to councils and you know, central government and national government. We need more pressure, basically, so that funding can be available for those sort of things.
Do you think we'll get over the line 2050? Big question, that.
It is a big question. You know, we've got a massive amount of passionate people out there doing the work on the ground, but also research and development and things. And yes, we've got a lot of things hurdles to jump over to get there. But I think if we keep working at it and developing these things and getting the funding to do these amazing research and developments, there could be these amazing tools coming out of it. So never say never. I think this is an ambitious project, and we are well on the way to getting to some really close points.
There's another part of that question, which is how much more money will it take? But I imagine that's like as long as a piece of string.
As long as a piece of string, yeah. I mean, this is it. I mean, as things get developed and as new techniques get developed, you know, like the whole gene drive question, but also development of species-specific toxins and things. But those take money, and we need to invest in that.
Colette asks, how do you get work on an island project as a volunteer? 2 questions.
Give me an email. But I mean, there's a lot of New Zealand projects that are desperate for great, keen, passionate volunteers. You know, a lot of these community projects. So it depends where you live and what you want to do, because you know there's no shortage of cool projects to work on locally. So yeah, but there's plenty of scope internationally if people are keen.
But that's true, isn't it? If you think about a place you want to visit in New Zealand and spend a little time getting to know the community, what better way?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Will asks, have we learned much from Gough Island and Lord Howe Island eradication?
Yes, we have. So, you know, every project has a big debriefing session and goes through lessons learned, you know, what worked, what didn't work, and where they think they can go in the future. And this works for every project. But yes, there are lessons learned, and there's actually some really good publications out about that, particularly the Lord Howe one most recently and things. But the Gough Island is going through their debriefing now. But yeah, no. So there's always lessons learned. Every project you learn something new. Every eradication I work on, we take a lesson from the last one to the next one to make it work even more efficiently. So those lessons learned are vital.
Question from Lisa there, is the current success of Wellington predator-free program status due to the proximity of urban green in places like Zealandia?
So all of those green spaces and the current work that's been going on in Wellington as a whole, you know, they've always had the Halo project there around Zealandia, and so that's really benefiting because it is keeping predators low and things like that. You know, Wellington is a really complex project. Well, any mainland project is complex with social dynamics and technical dynamics and things. So, but yeah, having other projects happening in the same area and linking those in. So all of those backyard trappers and all the work they're doing is really helping those bigger projects.
And is that going to go also for a question that Lisa asks? It's saying, how do we increase the awareness in areas like Christchurch where the wildlife isn't dispersed throughout the city as much as a place like Wellington?
Education's the key, and it's basically holding, starting with your schools and your kindergartens and things, and teaching them through that, because anything that kids can absorb they take home to mum and dad. I really love engaging with schools. I think that's one of the key places to get that knowledge through, and that passion growing up through and things. But it's also just basically trying to have lots of information out to people, but in a really fun and engaging way. So social media and mainstream media, and open days, that sort of thing, because you'll be surprised, talking to random people in a supermarket, they'll be surprised, they've never heard of this before and I don't understand it. But when they find out, this is what this means, they're like, it's a real light bulb moment, and really key to do.
That's great. We've had great questions. I just got one from me to you to finish with, and that is all of the fantastic community groups that you have seen working so well, and some of them for a very long time. Have you sort of been able to put one or two top things as being very necessary for these to be, for them to be achieving the most they can?
Well, one thing is they need a really passionate leader, often somebody who's making the time to keep bugging everyone else in the group and to keep that momentum going. And so somebody who really takes ownership and leadership of the area and of the project is awesome. I mean, we've worked with some fantastic group leaders who just love it, and have in some situations been doing it for 25 years and are not planning to stop anytime soon.
Wow.
So it's just making sure that we keep people engaged and that passionate. Don't give them a chance to lose that passion, because we need that momentum.
And you've done this for a wee while now. What keeps you going?
Well, it's just fantastic. I mean, it's quite funny. I got asked on my very first eradication, when would I, so this was on Lundy Island, we were removing ship rats and Norvegicus, Norway rats from this island, and it had a few people there and 20,000 visitors a year. And I got asked, when would you see this island eradication being a success? And I said, well, when the tourists who stay there at the Lighthouse House complain that they're being kept awake by Manx shearwaters at night. And basically 5 years ago, which is about 15 years after we did the eradication, I had the first phone call, somebody saying, they are really loud. What can you do about shearwaters? And I said, go out and look at them, because they're awesome. So basically it's getting back to these islands and visiting them again and seeing the changes. But for now, when we're doing so many with communities, it's watching the passion on their faces and the enjoyment of their ecosystem and ecology now, because like the Isles of Scilly, to take a 96-year-old grandma with us to show her a Manx shearwater chick and seeing her face light up and talking about how she's never seen them in her lifetime, it is just amazing. So we just want to keep doing that.
Biz Bell, you're a legend. Managing Director of Wildlife Management International. People can get in contact with you. You are the kind of person that does, even if you're really busy, you will get back to people.
Yep. No problems. Love to work with anybody else. We'd love to get out there, and New Zealand, we can do it. We can get rid of these predators, and we're leading the world, and we should be just super proud of that.
Yeah, thank you. We're really proud of you. Thanks, Biz. Lovely to talk to you.
No worries. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. On behalf of Predator Free New Zealand Trust, everyone, that's been another great webinar. And remember, it's recorded, and so that you can watch it or pass or share it with somebody that you think might benefit from seeing it. Everybody is saying goodbye. Lovely to have all of you here. We'll catch you at our next webinar. See you again. Bye-bye, everybody. See ya.
Bye.